Welcome to the Blogger Genius Podcast, brought to you by Milotree. Here's your host, Jillian Leslie.
Hello, friend. Welcome back to the Blogger Genius. I'm your host, Jillian Leslie. I'm also founder of the Milotree pop-up app, founder of Catch My Party, business coach, and business translator. I take what's working in blogging today, break it down so you can use these strategies in your own business. Before I get started, I wanted to invite you to join my newsletter. Every Sunday, I send an email with my 4 biggest takeaways from my most recent podcast episode. This is a great way to stay up to date on what is happening in blogging and entrepreneurship today. And I send it out in a really easy to understand and digest format. And hopefully you find my email sweet and entertaining. So head to milotree.com/bloggergenius to join, to sign up. It's also a great way for you to be in contact with me because I read every email that gets sent to me. So if you ever want to suggest a guest or have some feedback, please just reply to the email. Again, head to milotree.com/bloggergenius to join. For today's episode, I have part 2 of my interview with HollyAnne Knight. Now remember, she is the quilter behind String and Story. In part 2, HollyAnne talks about how she figured out how to build a business. And it wasn't necessarily what she thought it was going to be, but all she did was she iterated and she learned and she tried different things and she found success. I think it's a really great story. I think you'll see that we are very like-minded and how we think about emergent business building. So without further delay, here is my part 2 with HollyAnne Knight. So let's go back now in your journey. Okay, so you've got this library of posts, you're starting to grow your email list, and you're honing in on this is my niche within my niche. This is what I can teach. This is what's lighting me up. Yes. And now, when did you decide I'm going to put this in a course and I'm going to sell this?
Yes. So of course I'm continuing to listen to Amy and she keeps talking about this idea of digital courses, but I'm like, Amy, still broke, still don't have a lot of money to be investing in my business. And so I begin to think, how can I do this super scrappy, super, super duper scrappy? And I'm like, okay, I have my website, which is where I live on the internet. I've got this email list so I can go knock on other people's doors and be like, do you want to come hang with me? Right. But I'm like, I need a delivery mechanism and I need to know if this is really going to be viable. Do people actually want to take a class from me? I knew that when I would make my little 1-minute Instagram feed, this, before IGTV, this is before all the things, you can make a 1-minute square video on Instagram. And I'd gotten real good at teaching techniques real fast, real focused. And I knew that those videos performed best of everything that I made, that content. People loved it, particularly related to free motion quilting. But I was like, but do they just like it because video is still novel on Instagram, or do they really want to learn this from me? And I'm like, it's time to test this. So before I even created it as a paid course, I created this free mini course that at the time was Intro to Free Motion Quilting, and got together with a friend of mine in the industry who's been around forever and ever, Bonnie Hunter, love her. She has a huge audience. You want to talk about a gal that's been blogging forever, Bonnie. And we got together and did a Christmas giveaway one year. And as part of that, I asked her to help me promote this new free little baby class that I had created, that I was literally offering in a Facebook group. I was recording it on my iPhone 6 and posting videos in a Facebook group. And that's how we were going to do this course. And she did. And it grew my list big time. And it grew my list particularly around this idea of I'm going to try teaching free motion quilting. So this was early 2018, maybe very end of 2017, heading into early 2018. And it worked like gangbusters.
So you're not monetizing this?
This was not monetized yet. This literally was just I'm going to test the theory of me doing this. Will people even show up if it's free? And will they get results? That was the other thing. I knew that I had gotten results for me, and I knew that I'd gotten little baby conversions of results for people on Instagram, but I'm like, can I take them from being terrified to actually quilting a thing, right? Forgive me, this lingering cough is still. So I knew I needed to test out, am I the teacher I think I am? Will this concept work? So I asked Bonnie, I'm like, will you just promote this to your audience? It's a free thing. Like, I'm not asking you to help me make money out of the gate. Like, will you just see if this works with me? So I had 1,000 people join my email list, like virtually overnight, who were like, that sounds super interesting. I had 400 people sign up for the first iteration of this like little baby course. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Wait,
like,
how many people initially? How many people?
400.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I had like my email list was like maybe 100 people like the week before, and I had told my husband, I was like, I will be happy if 10 people sign up. I'll consider that a success. I was like, and if like 25 show up, this is like earth shattering. And then like all day, my phone was blowing up. I was like, 400 people won in this Facebook group. Like 400 people are like so curious about free motion quilting. And I knew that there were videos online. Like I knew there were free resources. There are other teachers who have been doing this like longer than I've been quilting, right? So it wasn't that there weren't resources. I think what it was is two factors. One, there were very few like organized resources. There were like isolated videos about a technique or here or a technique there, but nobody had like offered an easily accessible system. That was one. And two, I think people were just so afraid that they wouldn't be able to do it that even the like more organized courses that were available, people were very hesitant to spend money. Because maybe they'd spent money doing an in-person class before and didn't get results with that. So why would they spend money like to do an online class? Why would an online class be like more successful than an in-person class? That's so counterintuitive. But what happened is these 400 people showed up and we got results. Like we were together. It was like I was posting a new video like every hour on the hour for like 10 hours straight. I was in this Facebook group all day answering questions. Like it was bananas, but it worked. And at the end of the day, people who like could not put their free motion foot on their machine at the beginning were stitching out motifs at the end of the day. And I was like,
so it was a one-day thing, and you just
it was a one-day thing.
Live,
I just put it up,
recorded videos, and then answering questions.
And then answering questions in the comments.
So then
all
how
day long. And then at the end of the day, I did one live Q&A. So I got on for like an hour and was like, okay, we're here in real time now, even though I've been here in the group all day. Yeah.
Okay. And then how did you turn this into where you actually got people to open up their pocketbooks and buy this from you?
Right. So that journey was harder, I'll be honest. So I started strong, like right out of the gate, because immediately people were like, well, we want more. Right. And I was like, okay, well, this was intro. So now we'll have beginner free motion quilting and it'll be like in 2 weeks and I'll teach you some more motifs and it's $25. And I had, I think 35 people maybe sign up for that. So that was still like wildly successful for where my business is at this point. Right. The harder jump came from realizing it was exhausting for both me and my people for me to be trying to sell something like every week in order to do this like every Saturday. And the numbers quickly dwindled off over the next few months. And so I kind of had this boon of people come in and taught them kind of what I knew, but I had not mastered the like, how do I go out and continue finding new people? How do I keep this funnel flowing, right? I got this big influx of people. They came down through this funnel as it got narrow and narrow. At the very bottom, finally, a few months later, I was like, oh, I'll offer like a big all-inclusive course and I'll teach you everything I know for $150. And it worked. I had 5 people sign up for that. And I'm like, this was like Amy's concept of like a true digital course at this point, though I was still hosting it on Facebook. Let's be clear. There was still like not enough money to be investing in anything fancy. Still on my iPhone. I mean, I still record most of my stuff on my iPhone, like real talk. But it worked. I got this big group of people in for free. They trickled down the funnel through some like intermediate classes at intermediate price points. We got to the big offer. A small number of them passed through the bottom of the funnel. I was like, okay, but now I have to figure out how to keep filling up the top of the funnel. And like, how do I do that again and again and again? And I literally sat back for like a year after that and was continuing to blog each week. At this point, I had begun doing weekly videos that covered the same content as my blog, but it's just a different way of reaching people.
And where are you putting those videos? YouTube?
That's a great question.
Instagram.
All over the place. So here's how my content strategy works. It's madness, but I love it. So I get the new blog all polished up and finished by Monday night. It goes up Tuesday morning on my website with a little section that says video coming soon, and then all the blog content. And it's like a full blog post. It's not show notes. It's not an abbreviated version. It's like a full on, like, good information article, right? Then I go live on Tuesday mornings at 11 on Facebook, and I teach that information live. Sometimes it's face to camera, just like this. Sometimes I actually have a slide deck that, again, it's a different visual aid that's less text in the blog post, but it's not just my voice, right? I then take that video from Facebook, I download it. And that afternoon, it goes up on YouTube and gets embedded back in the original blog post. So anyone who goes
so wait, okay,
to
so
my,
are you recording it portrait?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or landscape.
I mean, sorry, not portrait.
Yeah,
portrait, landscape.
No, I got you. Yeah, so this is all landscape.
Okay.
So I record it landscape. It goes up on YouTube. The YouTube video then goes on my website. So things that have kind of permalinks to them a little bit more live there. And then I also have like a downloaded copy. So I like have a copy of all these, right? From there, the next day, it goes up on IGTV. It's still in landscape, whatever. People can turn their phones. It's fine. And lives there. So I trickle these things out so that one blog content multiplies itself, because I've got the images that I took for the blog content. I also have that slide deck that can be turned into a downloadable PDF. I now have this video that's living across different platforms, and it multiplies itself out. And all of this is evergreen content that like continues to be useful. So like right now, with all the uncertainty with COVID, I was like, I don't know if my kids are going to be in school. I don't know how many work hours I'm going to have this fall. Praise God, so far we're in school. It's beautiful. But I didn't know. And so I sat down in July and was like, oh, I created all that evergreen content a few years ago. Like, what needs a facelift? And I'm literally pulling blog posts right now from 2017, 2018, and giving it new life. I'm like, all right, well, how do I add a little more free motion quilting into it? How do I just add some new photos? How do I make a slide deck for an old blog post and republish that puppy and save myself some work? But also for people who have joined my audience in the last year or two, they've never seen this content before and probably don't even know it's there, because no one scrolls all the way back in blogs anymore.
And I will say,
like,
to be honest with you, one thing that I see over and over again is we're so weirdly afraid that people will say, HollyAnne, you published that 2 years ago. What's wrong with you? Like, I see what you're up to. Nobody cares. Nobody like,
and also I tell them, I'll tell them, if you were here in 2017, you've seen this before, but here's the thing, I got more to say about it.
But they don't even remember, and they don't hold it against you. Like, they're nobody.
Like, oh yeah, I forgot I wanted to do that project.
Totally.
And I put it in a bin, 2 years ago. I'm going to go pull it out and actually do it now.
Like, nobody has a checklist of your content going, cares. HollyAnne, I see that, I know when you publish this. Yeah. Promise you, nobody cares.
Nobody does. Reuse that content. And like doing it now, it has set me so free. Like in this season where everything feels so uncertain, it's like one less thing that I have to come up with from scratch in a time when like executive function is at a premium in all of our lives right now, And I feel like even with my audience, I think it's like I just mentioned, they'll go pull out that project that maybe they set aside 2 years ago. I think sometimes for our audiences, it's a gift for them too, because people have to hear things over and over and over again before it really sinks in. And so maybe someone wasn't at a place where they really, like maybe someone was a brand new quilter 2 years ago. They didn't have a lot of fabric, right? So when I wrote a blog post on how to tame your scraps, they're like, scraps? What scraps? I don't have any scraps. Well, 2 years later, if they're still with me, I taught that same content this morning, and now they're like, thank God, because they've been accumulating for 2 years and I didn't know what to do with them.
And one thing you said one thing you said that I think is super interesting is, so you worked this out and you got your funnel and people ended up at the bottom of it buying your product at your higher price point. And then you said you had to take a year to kind of work through this, to figure out how to put all the pieces together. And I think that in any journey, it's not linear. It's not like every day I move an inch forward. It's like sometimes I need to step back, process this, and then when I come back, maybe I move 5 inches forward really quickly. And then sometimes I might move back. So when you are kind of noodling on stuff, it doesn't mean you're not growing your business as much as you are kind of it's percolating. And then
It's
you get those
yes.
aha moments to go, oh, I see it.
Mm-hmm.
So for you,
it's in the crock pot.
Yes. And it
Yeah.
is, it's like marinating. And I always think
Yes.
that because I have a lot of times my aha moments in the shower, but it's not like I can say, today I'm going to have an aha moment. It's like,
Right.
I need to feel stuck and I need to feel like I don't get, like I'll say to David, my partner and my husband, like let's think about it, but also let's let it marinate and we will solve it, but we don't have the solution today.
Yes. Yes. And giving yourself that freedom too of like, I'm not a failure because I haven't figured it out yet. Like what I knew in May of 2018 is that I had a lot of pieces that worked and I hadn't like, I can never remember the name of them, but those machines you see where it's like dominoes and then like the marble goes down a slide and
right.
it hits the thing that
Rube Goldberg type stuff. Yes.
So I knew I had a lot of pieces of a Rube Goldberg machine, but I hadn't figured out how to string them all the way together to get myself across this chasm of needing a real income, right? I had made a little bit here and a little bit there, but the whole thing had to scale to get across a much bigger gap.
I love
right?
that.
So May 2018, I had my first cohort come through. I had 5 students through what at the time I called Rockstar Status. What an SEO not friendly name. Like it was all insider language. And that was like one of the biggest puzzle pieces that took me a long time to solve. So I was very attached to this idea. I call my students my rock stars. And we had arrived at this kind of community thing of like, you're a rock star when you make it through this class. Like you're earning a certain status in our community by going through this class. We can assume a certain level of knowledge and expertise from you in this community if you've gone through this course. So I'd called it rock star status, but like that's useless to anyone who's not already in my community. So when I tried to launch the class the second time, like literally no one showed up. Like it was a complete flop because those pieces weren't together yet. Right?
No, wait. Okay. So how did you try to launch it the second time when it didn't work? And then ultimately, what was the SEO term or terms you started using to attract your audience?
Yeah. So my course now is Free Motion Quilting Academy, which tells you a lot of information. I'm going to teach you how to free motion quilt. Amazing. Earth shattering. I know. Googleable. Incredible. But when I tried to launch it the second time, in many ways, there were kind of 2 problems that happened. One, it was very much on the heels of my first cohort. And so there had not been a lot of time for audience growth. I'd been completely consumed with delivering this course for the first time. I had pre-sold the course. So I had an outline of what I was going to teach them, but I didn't have a single video when I took their money. So I had a lot of delivery to do and was very consumed with that. Keep in mind, like at this point, my kids are still 2 and 3 years old. Like I still have babies in my house when this is happening. And just kind of arrived at this place of like, oh, I need more money. Like I'm going to launch it again, but I hadn't done the pre-work, right? I hadn't told my people it was coming. I hadn't done a good job of really advertising the results that my students got incredible results. Like the thing worked super well. I had told them they'd go from being a baby beginner free motion quilter to a confident intermediate free motion quilter. And they did. Like all of that was really good. But again, got to fill up the top of this funnel and got to encourage people to keep moving through it. And how do I move people through the funnel in a really kind of streamlined way rather than like having them have to check all these boxes along the journey? And that was one of the things that the thing was originally designed where you had to kind of take all these prerequisite smaller classes with me. And the idea was like every smaller like builds trust with my audience. And like all of that's great and everything, but they get tired of having to they get tired of walking down the stairs to go get their wallet. They're like, take my money and teach me the thing already. Like I don't want to have to sign up 17 times. So the rest of 2018 was a lot of noodling around this. I released some quilting patterns and did some other things, but really not a lot of revenue, a lot of noodling, a lot of testing, a lot of using my content on my blog, on my videos, on my social media to figure out what are people responding to, what is going to work, what language do people respond to, and a lot of learning. I consumed so much educational content that year and still not a lot of money to be reinvesting, still wasn't taking Amy's big course, there just wasn't money for it. But I became incredible at searching the podcast universe for all kinds of resources, reading every business book that I could get my hands on. The amount of money I spent on Audible was actually kind of astonishing. probably would have been more affordable to just buy Amy's course, but that's a whole other thing. So, but just building my business knowledge of like, if this is going to scale, if this is going to become a real second income, if this is going to become a real company, if I'm going to be CEO of String and Story. Now, that's what I consider my title at String and Story, but full disclosure, I'm still a one-woman show. Like, it's still just me. There is only the CEO. So it's more of a chief everything officer at this time.
I like that.
You know, I do what I can. I'm looking forward to having a team, but it hasn't happened yet. So how do I scale this? How do I do it as one woman? How do I do it with these 2 little kids at home? This took close to a year. And the following spring, and for the first time ever called it Free Motion Quilting Academy. And this whole year, most of this year, we had continued calling it Rockstar Status inside of my community, inside of my Facebook group, all of this. And I finally had to get over my like ego of the thing and my emotional attachment to the thing and realize I could talk about gaining a rock star status. I could talk about being a rock star, but come up with a better name. And so that spring, I relaunched Free Motion Quilting Academy, and I believe it was about 30 or 35 students sign up. It was still $150, and it was like a $3,700 launch. So crossed 4 figures on the digital course. This was like,
where are you teaching it? Are you on Teachable? Are you still on Facebook?
So at
How
this
long
point,
is this course?
yeah.
How many weeks?
Yeah. So at this point, the course was 6 weeks, and I was on Thinkific. So I had moved it over there. Kind of as I had taught it the first time, I had discovered Thinkific and begun to move it over there. And so we're on Thinkific at this point, and Amy had just like relaunched Digital Course Academy. And I was like, I want to do like the big fancy stuff, but I couldn't afford her class, but I had this fire under my bum of like, we're scaling this business. Like 2019, this thing is scaling. And so this was a huge first one of like, all right, we hit the 4-figure mark. And I began to be like, well, can I hit the 5-figure mark? And my list was growing. My list at this point was probably maybe 2,500 people. So still not a very big list, but I was getting better at talking about it. I developed a couple of lead magnets, a couple of PDFs, PDFs that were related to free motion quilting. Imagine that whole idea of staying like in my niche. Phenomenal, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And just began to double down on that over those next 6 months. And fall 2019 was like the real big breakthrough. Now, keep in mind at this point, like I've been in the quilting and free motion quilting space for 2.5, maybe 3.5 years, like several years. This was not a quick journey. This was a long game journey to build this up in a way that's been sustainable and all of that.
But here's the thing. I'm gonna
Yeah.
say though, I don't think it's a long journey. I mean, from where you started,
Yeah.
I think that we buy into this idea that I'm going to, spend a couple $1,000s, buy a course, and all of a sudden I'm a millionaire. And it is hard work.
Yeah.
It is.
That's exactly it. And I wish there had been more conversation around that as I was getting started of like, and I think there was enough, right? Like I had enough that I remember articulating at multiple points, like I'm here for the long game. Like if nothing else, I will outweight my competition because I was in this very privileged position of like, John was supporting our family, right? Like John had a job and like he was supporting our family and we'd always made it as a single income family. And like, we could figure that out. And as much as I wanted to be a 2-income family, like the bills were paid. I had the luxury of time, right? And I understand there are circumstances where like you may not have that luxury in the same way, and that's a lot harder. But even like regardless of circumstance, industry, anything, the idea of a journey of like, I'm going to start this journey today and 90 days from now, I'm going to quit my day job and be a millionaire. Like that like doesn't happen.
It doesn't. And I'm the first one to say this. And I feel like because we have this expectation that that's going to work. And as long as I spend, somehow I'm going to have this knowledge and I'm going to be able to put it all together. I call it a long slog, which because I want it to seem
it's
not
like middle
sexy.
School for entrepreneurs.
Totally. It's awkward.
You know what I mean? You're
It
like,
is.
my body's growing things and I smell and like, why is there hair there? Like,
yeah,
all
and
the
I feel like an imposter. I think everybody hates me. That is a very good example.
I hate me.
Yes. Yes. And you think it's never going to end. And then, you start to come out. Like your boobs start growing and they look pretty good. And then
you have that day where you like look in the mirror and you're like, today I look okay.
Yes.
And then the next day a big zit shows up on your face and you're like, well,
let's start all over. And I think that that is true too, which is as soon as you solve something in your business, there are many more problems to solve. You don't arrive.
More problems.
But this is why I always think we need to look backward to go, where did I start? And holding that vision, but also recognizing the humbleness of like, wow, you had to learn this lesson of letting go of that title so that you could attract people to you. They knew what you were doing. And then weirdly not beating ourselves up for going, why didn't I know this? Why didn't I
like
start
in retrospect,
early?
I'm like, why did I call it Rockstar Status? Like, that's the worst name ever. But I'm like, but it's where we were. And like, just like everything in my business, like I pulled something out of my butt, right? Like so much of this is just improvisation day in and day out. And like, sometimes it sticks to the wall and sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes enough of it sticks to the wall that we get to fight another day. And like, that's worth celebrating. And I think as entrepreneurs, it's so important to like take the wins where we can get them. And like, we get so bogged down in like, the name was dreadful. What if I had named it better first? But like, lose track of the fact that like, look how much stuck to the wall. I like pulled this promise and this outline like out of thin air, threw a name on it, sold it, and it worked. Like I delivered on my promise and my people got results. Like more of that handful of pasta stuck to the wall than fell off of it.
I wanted to take a short break to talk about your content and Milotree. You create amazing content and it draws people to your blog, but don't let those people get away before you've been able to capture them in your universe. And this is where Milotree comes in. Milotree pops up on your blog and asks people to join your email list or follow you on Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, or YouTube. And then you can build a real relationship with your audience. Head to milotree.com, sign up, install it on your blog. In 2 minutes, you get your first 30 days free. Then it's just $9 a month. We've also optimized it like crazy, so it won't slow your site down. So really, there is no risk. Pause the episode, head to milotree.com, sign up for your free trial, start growing your business faster. And now, back to the show. I say that you are a miner, mining for gold. And when you find that gold, you keep digging. But it doesn't mean that you're going to find more gold immediately. It doesn't mean, and most of the time, you don't find gold. Yeah. So when you find gold and it connects, that's when you do go, oh my God, but you've got to be out there and assume most days you're coming home with no gold. Yeah. But the more times I go out there, the more times I'm out in those hills with my pickaxe looking for gold and sweating and, you know, it's uncomfortable and my water bottle ran out and I'm hot and I'm still mining away. Those are the people who have success.
I'm going to live to dig another day.
Absolutely.
And constantly being investigative. That's a hard word. Like out in that, like imagine if, as I was sewing t-shirt quilts, if I had just, and don't get me wrong, like my people will tell you, I love me some good Harry Potter audiobooks. Like I listen to the Harry Potter audiobooks all the time, but imagine if that's the kind of audiobook I only was listening to as I was sitting there making t-shirt quilts. If I had never been like, let me just kind of go see what's out in the world of like, maybe how I could sell more of these and discover this thing of like, oh, I could teach online. And like, I don't have to be the world's best at this to teach online. And that moment of like, I literally went to school to teach and I thought I was going to be in a middle school classroom, but like, what if I do this? Like, what if I teach this skill? And like, and that like kind of mind blowing moment of like, all these pieces fit together in a way that I'd never seen. And once I changed the name of Free Motion Quilting Academy, and once I really honed in on that language, I did a much better job with that cohort, really tracking their progress, paying attention to the words they used with me, writing down the questions they asked, writing down the language they used around their fears, all of those things. The pieces really began to click. And that's where I finally knew, all right, who am I talking to? Because that was the other thing when I'd first launched this. Remember, I was trying to launch to people like me. And like, I work with almost no one like me. Like almost all of my students are substantially older than I am. They're in very different walks of life. Like they got grandbabies that are older than my babies. Like, but figuring out like, okay, so this is who I'm talking to and who I'm selling to. This is how I talk to them. These are the problems they're having. And that's what this year was all about, right? This in-between years. I got all of these pieces. And then the magic happened because I was able to put it all together and figure out a launch. And how do I build up this anticipation? How do I get people excited about this thing that's to come? Because that was the first bit with these first couple of launches. It was a lot of just like, and here it is, thunk, want it or not, come and get it, like bring a dinner bell. Instead of, here I am like chopping the garlic in the kitchen and that smells good. And then, oh, here's all these colorful veggies and those are really pretty. And then let me, add some more to the sauce and just let it simmer and let everyone kind of smell it cooking through the house all day, right? Figuring out how to do that with my product, figuring out how to use my blog, use these weekly videos, use my social media to begin planting seeds far in advance of the cart opening and saying, this thing is coming. Let me tell you why it's going to be awesome. Let me get you excited.
Have you taken, is this when you took Amy's course?
I hadn't taken it yet at this point.
Okay.
No.
Great.
I'm still listening to her podcast and watching her launch. That's what I did a lot of, was watching her launch.
Okay.
And it wasn't until fall 2019 that it was after the launch I'm telling you about that I finally got to take her course. I finally earned enough money. Hadn't earned enough money up to that point to like reinvest that kind of money back into the business and still like add to the family, So last fall, these pieces really finally clicked into place. And I like reached back out to Bonnie and a couple other friends in the industry and said like, will you help me promote this? Like, will you talk about it to your people? And I'm like, if I can just create the effect of like, this girl is everywhere, then I can get this anticipation built up. People can just see it enough times, all those sales touches we talk about of people having to be, touched like 11 or 17 times or wherever in that it is of like, I need my face and my name and the name Free Motion Quilting Academy and pictures of my work everywhere for weeks before this cart opens and especially while the cart is open.
Did you do an affiliate program for these people or were
I
they
did
just
at
your
this
friends?
point.
Okay.
Yeah. So at this point I had like scraped up enough money over the summer. Tarzan K had done an interview with Amy and something clicked with the whole email list thing that hadn't quite clicked in the same way before of like how to write a sales sequence. And I had launched a quilt pattern like Quilt Along and made like a surprising amount it was a $10 product and I made $1,000 in a week. And I was like, this is the money for my launch. And so I was like, okay, we are moving from MailChimp to ConvertKit. We are moving from Thinkific to Kajabi. Like, let me make some of these upgrades that I know that Amy's going to teach me about later anyway, and figure this out. And I hadn't really figured out the webinar thing, but I knew how to talk on video to my people. So there weren't slides or anything like that, but I could just get on and like talk about it, of like, this is why this course matters. This is the problem. These are the problems you're having. This is how I can solve them. These are why you're telling me it won't work. Here's why it's going to work anyway. Please sign up. Right. And all the pieces.
And how much are you charging for this time?
This is still $150. So I did an early bird sign up of $125, which is like, this is also now an 8-week course at this point. And it's so much content. Like it's kind of ridiculous. But I also am like in a hobby space and I'm working with a lot of students who are on fixed incomes. And I'm like, all right, let me bear all that in mind. So still a very affordable price point. And the machine wasn't perfect, but it was a whole lot better, right? Like if we're looking at this funnel, there still was plenty that fell out the sides, that the pour wasn't quite right, whatever, but it worked a whole lot better. And I had set a goal for that launch of $10,000. I made $32,000 last September.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay.
I know, right?
and all of this is 12 weeks? Mm-hmm.
At this point, it was
8 weeks. And have
class,
you recorded all of these sessions? How are you doing this?
So I was pre-selling again. So it was in theory the same class, but I knew it was time to redo the video because spoiler, there's a big gap between an iPhone 6 and an iPhone 10 or whatever I have now. Still on an iPhone, but it's a lot better. So it was another pre-sale situation of like, I'm going to be videoing these things like one step ahead of my people, right? But my teaching had improved. Knowing like what questions they were going to ask for certain motifs and certain techniques had improved. And so I re-recorded the whole class that fall as I made this transition to Kajabi. I guess it was probably right around 300 students. And same thing, like phenomenal results. And like the transformation that happened for my people, I just was like, how like I'm a girl with an internet connection and a passion for reaching other women and calling them into creativity and community. And like, by George, it's working. Like,
So when you launch this, are all of the videos live? Could I do the 8 weeks in one sitting, or are
no,
you kind of releasing them?
I release them.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then
I manage the overwhelm of my people.
Okay, great. And then
I manage it for them.
Where is everybody coming together? On Kajabi for conversation, for questions?
So there's a Facebook group that goes along with the class.
Okay.
Yeah. So I do weekly live Q&As. I release a module every other, at this point it was like, there were a couple implementation weeks, but it was still mostly a module every week. And then there were like a couple implementation weeks at the end that we called the catch-up weeks. And everything comes with like lifetime access too. Because I also recognize that there are people, like I've had multiple students, we get 2 weeks in and they're like, I fell and broke my wrist, or like, my daughter's having a baby, I need to go like take care of the newborn for 2 weeks. Like, life happens. So all of this comes with lifetime access, but there's this rich community happening in this Facebook group. And then this like much more kind of polished video situation happening over on Kajabi. Still not perfect, still on my iPhone. Like, none of this is perfect. All of this is scrappy, but getting better.
Love
and that's
it.
always my goal. Every time I record, every time I launch, what is like the one thing I can improve?
And
I'm not
how
going to
long
fix everything.
in a week, like a week session, let's say, where you're recording video, how long is it to consume? Like, is it a half an hour video per week?
Yeah.
Like, because that's a hard balance. You want to show that you're giving enough content that it's worth it, yet not overwhelm your audience where they're like, I can't watch a 2-hour video.
Yeah. So it's usually several shorter videos. So there's maybe 4 to 5, like 10-minute videos. And each one is teaching a single technique. So they can watch the single technique and go practice. And the idea being that like, if they did one a day, they would very easily get through in the week, even if they missed a day here or there. So it's this little kind of bite-sized bit of practice. All in all, if I've got a really committed student who's like very committed to finishing on time and seeing really huge results, she's probably spending like 2 to 4 hours a week on this. But that's not necessarily average. It's much more common that I get students who are with me for several cohorts and they're working, maybe 20, 30 minutes a week, and they get there on their own timing and their own pace. And I love that because like progress is progress and this is not a race. I'm just interested in moving them closer to this desired goal of being able to quilt their own quilts and being able to do it beautifully and to enjoy the journey along the way, right? It's so important that like we come to quilting as a hobby. Like, we're here to have fun. And if it becomes a competition, like I always tell my people, I said this morning, tell my rock stars, I'm unavailable in my quilting journey to do anything that raises my blood pressure, because literally the whole point of being here is to lower my blood pressure.
I love
and so like
that.
some start stressing me out. I'm like, bye, I'm going to go have a glass of wine. Like, I'm done.
I love that.
And,
okay.
And it's so important to allow them to do that too.
Love it. Okay, so you sell over $30,000 in this launch, and now
our lives changed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay,
and
and
we're a double income family.
Well, you totally are. So now you have the money to now invest in her course.
Yes.
Like, so
I
where
invest in Amy's course, and I went on this like blitz of investing in my business over the last year. So this was literally like exactly a year ago that this happened, and like. I remember, so we have this brewery that we go to all the time. And I remember I was sitting there, my husband was actually out of town. I'm sitting there with the 2 kids refreshing my phone and my Kajabi account, right? And it hit the first $10,000. And I'm like holding a beer and just like sobbing. Like, I'm like, it worked. Like, it finally worked. Like, all of the like, were there ways I maybe could have streamlined this journey? Like, maybe so, but like my journey was my own. And my journey was like, intimate to me as an entrepreneur, but it also was like intimate to me and those like early adopters. Like, those first students who took that course like are still with me, and like we've been on this journey together and we've grown together as humans because we're doing this community thing, right? Mm-hmm. So I go on this blitz of investing in my business. So I took Amy Porterfield's DCA, I joined her momentum program, I took Heather Sager's Speak Up to Level Up, I took Stu McLaren's Tribe, Tarzan K's Email Stars. Like, I have gone on this blitz of the last year of like, I've gotten all of, the like free beginner to intermediate level education. I'm ready for like my degree, shall we say, like, let's do this thing properly. And the growth over the last year has been absolutely insane. So had figured out this funnel, right? And I immediately turned around and like relaunched again January, February. I had a $48,000 launch.
Oh my
so
God.
50% growth in like 4 months. Yeah. Because once the machine works, like the machine works. And like you get all the big pieces together and then you're making these little tweaks. So that like first big slog up the hill as an entrepreneur is so hard. Like establishing your blog, getting people to learn your name, learn your face, learn your business name, learn your URL, understand why they should go to your website and what they're going to get there, why they're going to get value from you on your list. But once you get all those pieces in place and you get that first big slog up the hill done, like the ride down from there is awesome.
That's amazing.
And it just becomes this fun journey of multiplication and like serving more people and seeing more lives change and getting to encourage more rock stars and becoming a better teacher, becoming a better entrepreneur, like becoming a better business and a better website. And hopefully here in the near future, becoming an employer, right? Creating jobs, like all of this abundance, like begins to just give and give and give. Like the willingness of my students to trust me with their money and me being able to take that money and transform my family and invest in my community, invest in my business. And then that business investing back in their community by bringing more of them in and hopefully getting to hire and affecting those lives. Like it becomes this like this flourishing that was the vision all along, but yet it's so much bigger and so much more beautiful than I ever could have imagined. Like the first time I was trying to cut up t-shirt quilts and like took off the end of my finger with a rotary cutter, you know, that it started in this very like messy middle schooly place. And now it's growing into this gorgeous, thriving thing that like, here we are in the middle of COVID and like everything is so hard. And yet I was able to like look through the screen to my audience and be like, I know, because the class is now $200. And I was like, I know $200 is a lot of money, but I also know that like your mental health is invaluable. And if quilting is the place where you go for your mental health and for your emotional well-being, and if this community is the place where you find solidarity, then like you got to jump in with me, because the flourishing of that is going to ripple out for all of us. Like we're all going to be stronger and healthier. And like here in the middle of COVID, as a solo entrepreneur, I had $100,000 launch last month with the same course. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
With this same course, basically the same content, but it's just staying in the game and believing in that vision and zooming out from, I'm going to be an entrepreneur that makes a bunch of money, but to realize like, what really is money? Like money is like our society's symbol of flourishing. And like, what are other symbols of flourishing? What are other ways I can make people flourish? And how can we spread that value around so that a business isn't just something to make an income for my family, but like a lot of people's lives can be changed for the better as a result of it.
I love that. And especially as women, I think that we all struggle with this idea of charging for stuff. That's weird.
Yeah.
And people not just giving it away for free. And the fact that you've been able to frame it in a way that I think is so beautiful.
Yeah.
You are providing for your family. Absolutely. You are becoming this bold woman who is like building something. Like think about what you're doing in terms of modeling for your children, but also for you're on my podcast, and my hunch is people are going to listen to this and be so inspired that there is this ripple effect and that you are helping people lower their blood pressure and find their joy in a time when we're all so nervous and feel so unsafe, and that you are the bigger you get, the more joy, the more peace of mind, the more happiness you are spreading.
Yeah.
So go, I'm like, you go, you grow,
Thank you
spread that.
And like being able, as you know, COVID hit in March. Like I finished that $48,000 launch like in February. COVID hit in March, and like we live just outside of this like little suburb of Atlanta called Duluth. There's a lot of really locally owned businesses in Duluth. And to be in this position, like as COVID happened, that like all our local restaurants either closed or they went to like takeout only. And we were able to like triple our spend. Like we, maybe would eat out once a week. And all of a sudden, like we're eating out like half the time because these businesses need this revenue. And like, we've just been blessed with this, and we're going to help them feed their families because we had these folks who were able to help us feed ours. But then like, them feeding their families means that their family is safer, and that just that joy going out. And I think it's just so important to realize that like money and resources and value, like none of these things are pies. Like these things are rivers, and we have the opportunity to like build these new tributaries. And like, that's why building a business is important, is because not only are we spreading around like the like vague sense of knowledge if we're teaching something, or the vague sense of a product. But the way that all these things, all these senses of value and flourishing and growth are interconnected, and like what that can do for our society. And like, just like you said, like, this is the power of being female entrepreneurs. Like, this is how women can change the world. Because like, we're going to look at business as so much more than just cash value. Like, there's a lot more value that can be spread around in how we choose to build a business and how we choose to bless the people around us.
Absolutely. As women, we are so good at connecting, at empathizing. And if you can then make money doing that, you get to spread that goodness even more so.
Yeah.
We care about people. And you get to do that on a grander scale.
Yeah.
So let's talk now about going forward. So you just had your $100,000 launch.
$100,000 gross revenue.
Where do you see yourself now moving? What is the vision for, let's say, end of 2020, beginning of into 2021? And how often do you launch, by the way?
Yeah. So I launch twice a year, and my launches are lopsided to the back half of the year because people tend to quilt more in the cooler months. That, and I really like having the freedom to be online a little less in the summer. So I generally launch like August or September, and then January or February. So kind of when we're heading into the cooler season and then coming out of the cooler season, the course has expanded to be a 12-week course, which I think is absurdly long, but it's what my students wanted. So it's what my students get. And I do see better results with it. It's just, that's a long time for a digital course. So we spend 3 months here, but it means we're like tight by the time it's done, you know? So right now, I have 550 beautiful souls that I'm taking care of and guiding on this quilting journey. And like, that in its own regard is like a weight, right? So a lot of my energy is going to them, spending time with them. And then beyond my course, I have a back-end membership called the Guild for folks who have like graduated from the course or who are finishing up the course. So those are kind of my two like top priorities in terms of people. But in terms of like the infrastructure of String and Story, September has been a lot of rest. My grandfather died in the midst of my last launch. And so as soon as the cart closed, I was like, I love you guys. I'll be back in a week. And we like booked it to the beach with my parents. But just took some time, took some space, have gotten the kids settled in school. And now I'm really excited to finish this year strong. And I always seek to lead by example, not as only as a business owner to other business owners, but just like as a woman to the women that are in my community. And I've talked a big game about finishing 2020 strong, and I really want that to be true. So much has been like, in a sense, taken from us this year, but I don't think that means we have to count this year like as a loss. Like, we all went into 2020 saying like, this is our year. Like, this is the year where we get it together and like big things are happening. And like some of us like me, like I have been really blessed that like my business has tripled in the last 12 months. And that's just like tripling, and like the single launch of it has tripled. Like my business, I like, honestly, the numbers are like so big that I haven't even run them. Like it's like 300, 400 something % that my business has grown this year. But like, that doesn't change the challenge of the year either. Like I've been blessed financially, but still lived through this weight. And I think the gift that 2020 has given all of us, if we're willing to accept it, and in some ways it's a bitter gift at times, but it's that gift of clarity. And like what really should stay in our businesses, what really should stay in our lives, what should stay in our society. Like there's a lot of conversations that could be had there about this clarity and like what needs to get uprooted right this minute and what seeds do we want to be planting. So a lot of things happened this summer, like in my personal life, but in my business some as well, of like, okay, these things are going away. So right now I'm kind of taking care of the earth, if you will, to be able to grow bigger in 2021. So my big goal for the next 3 months is to hire my first 2 employees. And they'll probably be part-time for the beginning, but I really need like a high level, like executive assistant, high level VA, someone like that, and a community manager to help me take care of my people. So that's a big part of like what'll happen coming out of this launch is like, it's time to scale String and Story bigger. Like I've seen like what I as one person can put out into the world. But my kids are getting older, and ironically, like they need more of me as they're older. than even they did when they were younger. And just like me mentally is really what it is. Like we get time. It's like the mental presence of being able to actually set the business down. Because when you're a solo entrepreneur, like if something blows up in the Facebook group, there's only one person who's going to fix it. You know what I mean? And I'm beginning to build in like the ability to actually set the thing down and rest for real and get to model that for my audience and model that for my students in a way I haven't been able to do before. And also continuing that outgrowth of flourishing, of actually creating jobs in a season where we're seeing a lot of job loss, and particularly jobs for women, that as moms are at home. And, you know, I think I'm sure you've seen the statistics of like the number of women that are having to step back from their careers because of what's going on with like having kids at home for school and all of that. But to create some jobs that are very specifically designed that like you could do this with your kids at home. Like you could do this as a mom, like continuing to seek to have this like VA role, or as, you know, a woman who's maybe worked in community in other respects, like let's bring that digital and do that here. So that's the big thing. And then the class comes back in January, like we start all over again. I was looking at the calendar this week, like 6 weeks from now, pre-launch starts again. And we start that marble rolling through the machine all over again for that January launch. Oh, so it's going to be amazing.
Wow. HollyAnne, what an amazing story. Truly. It is hopefully so inspiring for everybody. And really my takeaway from this is how it evolved, you putting in the effort, putting in the energy at every stage, but it was not a clear path. It became clear. When you look back on it now, you could go, oh, I put this together and then this together and then this together. But that it is, so it's a messy journey. And yet you've been able to just keep moving forward. And now it's clicking. And it couldn't be, it's amazing when the pieces start to fall into place, what magic can happen.
Yeah, I was going to say that's where the magic happens, is like being willing to walk that messy journey, being able to assess honestly with yourself what worked and what didn't. Like I made a decision, and whatever happened from that decision, like is completely amoral. Like it's neither good nor bad. It's just, did it work or did it not? And how do I pivot accordingly? And that's always the journey of the entrepreneur. And beyond that, like keeping that vision, like it's worth, this is another thing with 2020, like it's worth creating the margin to sit down with a journal and say, what is the vision of this thing, right? Like String and Storied really became to grow and become magical when I realized that quilting was a vehicle for much bigger things. And there's two pieces of that. Like one that adds this like whole other level of like dignity and beauty to what I'm doing. But also like, if you have a bigger vision for like a population you're wanting to serve, like you can pick any niche that they've got problems with that you can solve in order to reach them. And like, you can make money doing anything. Like if I can make money teaching quilting on the internet, like it's almost hilarious when I say it.
But not
like
just
that.
Quilting, not just quilting.
Like this very specific free motion quilting, primarily to baby boomers on the internet.
It's like,
I'm 29. And you say that and you're like, that's nuts. But it's this beautiful vehicle to serve women that are isolated and lonely and craving community. And they have so much to give and to be in community with each other and to love on each other and take care of each other. And like, so anyway, as an entrepreneur, take that time to create that bigger vision. Like give yourself the grace in the little gritty things, but also take time to pull out of the gritty things and be in that big picture and be like, where is this going? Like, what are the big things that I want to accomplish, right? Like, how do I want to be able to give back? Who do I want to be able to love on? Who do I want to see thrive and flourish? That's far more than just me and my family. And that's a valid thing in and of itself, right? And there was definitely, with those t-shirt quilts, there was a season of String and Story where it literally was, we are trying to dig our way out of credit card debt and I don't know where the grocery money is coming from, so I better go sell a quilt, right? And that's beautiful and valuable in and of itself. But as you gain that traction, zoom out and look at the impact that you can have, because you have immeasurably more power to change lives around you than you think you do. And business is a gorgeous vehicle for that.
All right, HollyAnne, if people want to reach out to you, learn more about you, what is the best way to do that?
Ooh, okay. So you can find my website at stringandstory.com. And if you go to stringandstory.com/entrepreneur resources, let me make sure it has an S at the end because we want to have that correct. Yes, Entrepreneur Resources with an S at the end. I've got a few like easy links there that link over to my social. There's an easy link to my newsletter list if you're an aspiring quilter or already a quilter. I also have a link there to a Facebook group I've started called the Arts and Crafts Online Educators. So if you're in a creative niche and you're looking to add education as part of your business, and you want to be in a Facebook group with me where I'm like sharing resources, it's all very casual, but just to be in a space of like-minded people and people who are looking to do business in this really holistic, scalable, like but profitable too kind of way, then I'd love to have you join us.
Awesome. Okay. Well, you've just like really inspired me for the day. Truly. I'm so glad that we got the chance to do this. So thank you so much for being on the show.
I'm so glad to have been here. Thanks for listening to my long, messy, beautiful, fabulous story.
Wow. What an episode. I hope you enjoyed that. My biggest takeaway is that your job as an online entrepreneur is to show up, try new things, iterate, see what's working, see where you get traction, start building off of that, and definitely listen to your audience. Notice when they've got problems and see if you can figure out a way to solve them. And if you want to stay up to date on what is happening in online business, please join my newsletter. Head to milotree.com/bloggergenius, and I will send you a weekly email where I highlight my 4 biggest takeaways from every single episode. Think of it as a cheat sheet, Cliff Notes, that kind of thing, but stay in the know. Head to milotree.com/bloggergenius, super easy to remember, and I will see you here again next week.